Okay, perfect. So we are at 12:03. I think we should get started because you joined on time. I am Chaitra Vedalapalli. I run two companies. I run a tech company called Mela. We are a Gold Microsoft partner. We really focus a lot on creating economic access through digital transformation, and we focus a lot on MarTech automation in the tech industry, mostly around the marketplaces and evolution of the marketplace, as well as participation of companies in the cloud vendor marketplace. The second role that I play today is like I'm the co-founder and also president of Women in Cloud. We have a large community which is focused on creating $1 billion in economic access for female tech founders in the enterprise ecosystem. So as we go through this particular, it's more of a movement. We drive economic development work, and we focus a lot on community development and events. Second, we really do a lot of work with Fortune 100 brands. We really have lunch and learn sessions. We do policy work. We unlock the supplier ecosystem. And third one is we focus a lot on policy advancement. And the policy advancement is around AI, supplier ecosystem, as well as proclamations in the different countries to really ensure that women have employability as well as economic access to build their business. So as we go through today, and the way we actually bring the solutions to market is three things. One is we have a very entrepreneur-focused programming that we do. So if you go to the next slide, Raisa. What we focus a lot on is ensuring we have a cloud accelerator, we have a marketplace. If you have not check out solutions.womenincloud.com. Shows you all the solutions that are built by women for the enterprise market. We also have solutions around signature events, which we really ensure that the Fortune brands are working with us and the female tech founders. And then we do an advocacy campaign. So if you see on Women in Cloud, all these Empower Her access campaigns that are running, it's really to highlight the solutions as well as role models. And then we have a very dedicated focus in the enterprise ecosystem where we support with the diversity recruitment as well as advancing more of the leadership work in the ecosystem to make sure that they are doing the right representation of the women. And from community perspective is really creating skilling and access for women so that they can get into the tech industry, but a lot of policy work that we focus on. So we have amazing women who are joining us with us. These are our members who are from our ecosystem, who have gone through the accelerator, built a very successful business. We had recently, one of the company was acquired by Neiman Marcus. And then we have one company that has already did $1 million in enterprise agreements. So there are a lot of success that we are seeing because women are really building the strategic solutions for the enterprise ecosystem. So today what we will talk about is really around how to think about building a tech solution for the enterprise market. But before we go there, I have one question for all of you is, what is the hardest part of building a cloud solution for the enterprise market? Please go ahead and put it in the chat. What is the hardest part of building cloud solution for the enterprise market? I'll give like 30 seconds. And ladies, you can also chime in so that I think that will help everybody to kind of get started on this convo. So what is the hardest part of building cloud solutions for the enterprise market?
Just one?
You can add many.
I think capital and then access.
Absolutely.
Is what I would say.
Absolutely. Yep, getting from idea to MVP. Sure, we'll talk about that one today. Resource and capital. Yes, how do you go about that one? We'll have a light touch base on that, Manish. And go ahead and doing that one. So here is what is happening, right? As you embark on this journey to build that multi-million-dollar cloud business, it really starts with a solution that you have. And what you will learn today in this session is some of the laws that you have to embody, and then the best practices to really build your tech solution. And tomorrow we have an event which is all about Ask Me Anything to build anything around cloud solution development, please come to that event. It's much more 2-hour session. It's Ask Me Anything, so you can participate there. So as we look at, as the world is rapidly changing, right? It's changing in this pandemic. So is the technology transformation. And the digital transformation in the 21st century is really led by the cloud-based solution and artificial intelligence and the blockchain technology. So what it really does is it creates demand for entrepreneurs to create as a service models or business model which help you establish recurring revenue model. And that one really is driving like software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and more. And that is becoming our common terminology, both in the business world and in our personal lives. And today, what we are really going to be focusing on is some of the entrepreneurs to talk about each of the 5 laws, how they used it, and how they are bringing the solution to the market. So before we go in there are 2 things you need to know. If you're thinking about a cloud solution, the licensing is a critical component of how you design your product. The first licensing model is the net seat model, which means you're buying user-based subscription or building a solution with user base. Like we have Office, G Suite, you have Smartsheet, DocuSign. These are all licensing based on the user base. And as a partner, you get margins for selling that particular SKU to your customers, right? You get those margins, and you can also build services on top of that SKU, which provides a solution for the customer. Most of the Microsoft partners, they'll take Office 365 and then build a change management or maybe some kind of a specialized, customized software on top of the Office, and then they basically build is a cloud solution and provide to the customer. The second model is really the metering model. This is where it's consumption based. It works like how you consume electricity or water. That's exactly how you do it. And it really applies to Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. They have all these services, and you have to basically procure all these services. And then you get margins on the adoption of these, consumption of these services. As a partner, you get those rebates or you get those commissions for selling these particular products if you're in a CSP program, right? Or you can build your own IP and services. And today what we will talk about, all these entrepreneurs are building those IP services and on top of the Azure platform. And it's really building is a SKU. It can be a user SKU or a consumption SKU that they can provide to the enterprise customers. So I love all the input that you have talked about. Is some of the things is, proper identification of the target, revenue and business model, identifying what the business problem to be solved, navigating the leadership bias, and also organizational OKR versus platform strategy and blending the 2. So most of the entrepreneurs will talk about it. So who do we, the 5 laws that we will talk today are: 1, we'll talk about how to think about embracing the digital transformation in the enterprise world. Second one will be solving the mission critical solution. How do you go about that when you're working with your customer? Third is investing in a strategic narrative. How do you write that so that the enterprise customers are excited, because it's more than just a solution, but it's really a transformation story. Fourth is, how do you set $1 million revenue goal for your business, and how do you build your solution around it? And the last one is, how do you go about UI, UX and prototyping with your customer so that you really don't have the capital issue, because customers will pay for that. Okay, sounds good? Everybody ready? Do you like the context that you're going to learn today? Yes? Say yes or no in the chat. Fantastic. So I got the first yes. That means I'm going to go forward with it. So today I have some really spectacular women in cloud entrepreneurs who will talk about these laws and how they are bringing these laws into life. So first is Cheryl. She'll talk about her law and how she's going about it. Bhavya, she is the CEO of Zipboard. We have Sophia, she does the Indie Tech, she's the founder, and Jackie is the founder of ClearBrief. So as they are going to be presenting, I want all of you to type in if there's any question, because then we can moderate a Q&A with them. Sounds good? Okay, so going to the first law that we have, we know that the IDC estimates that the economic value of the digital transformation is around $20 trillion and more than 20% of the gross product or the GDP. So the cloud is the new way for doing business, and the implementation is gaining a lot of momentum. So in the past, the companies were required to buy and build and support and maintain IT infrastructure despite the growing cost year over year. But cloud computing, what it has done, that these costs are becoming more manageable. So you can drive increased flexibility for the business and easy collaboration. Second is scalability to grow your business. Free up your IT resources, because you can do that now. You can reduce your business cost. And then the last one is you can have employees and partners work together from anywhere and activate that remote work that everybody is looking for. So what you will see, because of the pandemic, more and more companies are adopting cloud and AI at a rapid pace to really transform their remote work, business continuity, security, and the migration of solutions. So that's what the CEOs believe, that they will be investing a lot in cloud transformation / digital transformation to go there. So with that, I would actually love to have Bhavya, CEO of Zipboard, to talk about how did she go about adopting this law to build a technology solution. And Bhavya, as you come in, I would love you to talk about is who you are, what you do, and then talk about how are you addressing this particular law.
Sure. Thank you, Chitra, and hi, everyone. My name is Bhavya Agarwal, and I am the founder and CEO of Zipboard. It's a digital review platform for content creation. I'll tell you a story of how I really started. I have worked as a software developer in large product companies. And then I started my own startup, and I was struggling with dealing with time zones and managing feedback on digital applications and content. So that's really what, I mean, I was going nuts with spreadsheets, email, and Skype calls. There was no Teams in those days. And, there was not enough context as well. So it was not very centralized. There's no collaboration, which was very visual either. Right. And that is really what led to Zipboard, which is, a visual way to manage feedback in content. And as we built the product, we really shared it with the content creators. We got their feedback. And in fact, I found my first customer from Reddit. So that was the point where I was like, okay, yes, we are talking to real people. But from that point to really an enterprise solution, that was a journey. It has been an iterative journey. It's not like we got there immediately. So one of the first things that I feel like we focused on was understanding the stakeholders. So when you're talking to your enterprise customers, it's not going to be one person. It's going to be maybe 20, 50, 100 people that you're supporting. And it was very important to understand their journey and, really empathize. Like I read an article today also that, in fact, one of the biggest things about Microsoft and, Satya Nadella coming in was empathizing with the customers. And I think that's like really something that I believe has helped us also get to the point where we are able to understand what the stakeholders are, who the stakeholders are, and what do they really require. And then moving on from there, we also realize that the enterprises focus on data. Data is gold. They want to know where their data is going. They also want to know how secure it is, where it is stored, how are you processing it. So you have to think about your data and what you're going to do with the data when building a cloud solution. The third thing is the technology. Technology today means, what are the tools that they are using? Who is going to use those tools? How well are they, how is everything connected with each other? even for example, like, in what kind of cloud solution that you want them to use. So it's a mixture of thinking about, and again, this is going to come through a lot of stakeholder conversations, but understanding the technology, where the enterprise is very important to build the right cloud solution, and not just and the last part, which I feel like is something that more and more is coming to focus, especially with remote work, is setting up automated processes. Every enterprise wants to focus on optimizing their processes and making sure that everything talks to each other. There is higher visibility among stakeholders, and everybody knows where is information flowing from one to another tool or technology or whatever the medium is. So I would say these are these four things have really helped us get to the point of creating the right MVP in the first place, and then from MVP to a real enterprise solution, so that we are today helping Fortune 500 companies optimize their digital content creation processes.
Fantastic, Bhavya. Totally, like, focusing on stakeholder data, technology, and automated processes are really critical to really drive the digital transformation conversation in the enterprise market. So as you heard it, here is a question for all the audience. What were your takeaways as you heard Bhavya? What was the thing that stood out for you as you heard about this law? And are you using this law in your business? If you're not, that may be the starting point for you to start engaging with your enterprise customer. Okay, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll go into the second law, which is solving the mission critical challenge. Most of the businesses really look into kind of solving a problem, but when you're going into the enterprise, you really need to consistently seek for solving a mission critical challenge, because that's where the budget is, that's where the people are, that's where the innovation is. So that is where you should be looking into as your law number 2 as you build your technology challenge. So I would love to invite Jackie Schaefer. She's the founder and CEO of ClearBrief, and talk about how she went about solving a mission critical challenge for her customers. Jackie, you're next.
Hi, thank you so much. So, yep, I'm the founder of ClearBrief, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as I'm talking about this first bullet point here. But just quick, high level, what ClearBrief does. So it was very exciting. The most prominent legal tech journalist said when we launched that ClearBrief does something that no other legal tech platform does. So we're kind of like a new product in the space. It's a platform built in Microsoft Word to help lawyers, judges, and paralegals quickly use AI to find that needle in the haystack of the thousands, sometimes millions of documents that make up the evidence in the case, to support what it is that they're arguing. And then it also has a number of cool features that help build like this interactive legal filing, so that the reader can see every single source that the lawyer and actually the judge is talking about. So my first tip here on solving mission critical challenges is to leverage domain expertise. Because what I noticed when I started ClearBrief was that there were a lot of products out there for contract law. It seems like corporate lawyers, were really getting in there and building the products that they wanted to use. And there's not as many products out there for litigators. And I think it's because if you love litigation, you're out there arguing cases before, before the courts. And that's what I spent most of my career doing. First in the private sector in big law, and most of my career I was an assistant attorney general, briefing and arguing cases before the state Supreme Courts and appellate courts in Alaska and Washington State. And so I knew this pain point so deeply that I knew how to build this product and this platform. But so if you don't come to the table already with that domain expertise of knowing like what is the most pressing pain point, because what I realized is that, the judges are deciding the cases based on the writing. But there's always this terrible process that happens right before the lawyers file something, where they're just stressing out and there's just a million different tasks you have to do related to finding the evidence, because legal writing has to have a source for every single sentence. So if you don't have that domain expertise, you need to find someone who does, and they need to be working really, really closely with the tech folks. And then my second point is to go deep and diverse on customer discovery. And it's actually related to this idea of finding someone who has that deep domain expertise, because they also have the network to connect you with the users, the potential users. And you cannot skimp on customer discovery. It's funny because I've talked to some startup, incubators where they're like, we think it's great if folks can talk to 15 to 20 potential users. And I talked to like 200 or more. And I just talked to every person who would take my call, reaching out to everyone on LinkedIn who I knew, and making sure that I wasn't only talking to lawyers, and I wasn't only talking to a certain kind of lawyer. I was talking to every person who touched the piece of legal writing, paralegals, legal assistants, the people who deal with the most stress, honestly. And I also made sure that I was getting diverse perspectives. One thing that was kind of funny is like at the enterprise, law firm, a big law firm, or even a court or a government agency, the senior leaders have a totally different idea of the work that happens to get a brief filed than the people who are on the ground, checking things over, fixing it up, making sure it's perfect. And so you need to make sure you're asking all the people involved in the process, and take really good notes, because what you're going to do is you're going to forget by the time you talk to the 200th person what that first person said. So you want to go through those notes and pick out the patterns, and even pick out the words that they use to describe the problem, because that's going to give you a lot of great insight into your marketing. And then those people can honestly become your wait list as well. Okay, so then actually I wanted to show a couple of slides for this last point about don't be afraid to tackle, systems problems, because this is, a slide that I made that shows, there's about 30 hours that go into this very first part of the legal writing process. This is like on average based on the 200 plus folks I talked to. And that part is really creative and fun, writing briefs, coming up with, your complex analysis. But then there's about 8 hours of attorney time that's spent going and making sure that things are accurate, finding the right document to support, what you're arguing, and then doing all this formatting stuff. And it's just a massive amount of work. And then if you go to the next slide, what I realized was that, every lawyer is doing this. And then we're filing essentially a piece of paper with the court that is not interactive, making the court and their clerks and their staff have to go manually look up every source document. And so that's what helped me thinking about these different users and realizing this is a systems problem, because the legal filings are used by everyone in the whole legal ecosystem. So I wanted to build a platform that that solves not only that one lawyer's problem, but my market can grow even bigger to encompass the judges, their clerks, the paralegals, and then ultimately we're actually realizing enterprise HR teams also do a similar process when they're writing their kind of legal analysis, basically their internal investigation memos and that kind of thing. So the other thing that we realized from looking at it as a systems problem is that everyone is using Microsoft Word in the legal system. And so that gave us a really good insight about how to tackle this. So you can see like we've built our AI so that when you're adding a citation, this is ER 45 is an example of a citation to the discovery, to all those factual documents that you're drowning in. And so this is, ClearBrief identifying with flagging as red, like your sentence actually doesn't seem to match with that source document that you cited to, but here's suggestions from all these other places in the record. So that it's really, really, astounding to see the reactions of attorneys and judges when they try this out on their own briefs as well as their opponents' briefs. So that's what I would say about mission critical challenges, and happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Jackie. That one was spectacular, because if you're building a solution, this is what I've learned, is to really have that meet with the domain expertise folks, understand end to end what that automation is, because a cloud solution is an automation of multiple little things that ties together to automate and remove the manual activities. And that's what you did, and absolutely spectacular work. Now, coming to the next one is investing in a strategic narrative. That's the law that nobody talks about, but in the enterprise ecosystem, because I came from the enterprise, most of the executives, they invest in building a strategic narrative or a brief or a concept paper. That's what it's called as. They want to solve the problem at the top of the, I would say add value to the top and the bottom line metrics. And the solution that you are building really need to address those goals, those strategic goals. So right now, the DEI is on the top of every executive right now. I would love to invite Cheryl to come and talk about how she is going about helping all the enterprise companies to solve their DEI challenge, and what is the strategic narrative, how she is building, and how she's helping the customer build their narrative. Cheryl.
Thanks, Chaitra. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Cheryl Ingram, and I am the CEO and founder of a company called Inclusology, and also the CEO and founder of a company called Diversity. And I've been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for about 21 years now, and have had a lot of key learnings that I'm going to try to summarize in this presentation. So what I do is I help companies, from small companies to enterprise companies, think about how to research with the diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And so as we're talking about investing in a strategic narrative, thinking about what your vision is for solving whatever problem your product is built to solve, we're going to talk about first, the thing that's not on this slide is bias. And the reason I'm talking to you about bias when you think about a strategic narrative is the fact that whenever there are minority populations, and I don't just mean racial minorities, although that is very key and important, any minority population, bias tends to increase when we are building narrative, whether conscious or unconscious, right? And so as we think about how to build a strategic narrative, and hello? Did someone say something? When we think about how to build a strategic narrative and minimize bias, here are 4 key components I want you to think about. The first is investing in your efforts in diverse narratives through accountability measures. What does that mean? So often when we are creating a strategic vision and we think about who it is that we want to speak to and who's using our product, we can often overlook diverse narratives that sit in the minority. And we also tend to overlook who has accessibility to that narrative. And so when I'm saying when you're investing in diverse narratives through accountability measures, part of your accountability measures are thinking about how to reach populations who would benefit from your product that may not be using it, or that are using it but are not receiving the full capability of it. So think about what kind of processes can you use to reach, one, your mainstream audience who is already brought in, but also people who need your product but are not brought in because potentially they don't trust the systems in which you are building upon. So think about that. The next is to include underrepresented and underestimated voices, and remember to create spaces for stakeholder empowerment. Now, especially to my leaders who are on the phone that are communicating their vision to the company-wide or to any stakeholder, this is extremely important. So whether it's your customer, whether it's your ecosystem, whether it's your board of directors, whether it's your leadership team, the one thing that you have to think about is the fact that you are less likely to listen to minority voices, even if they are adamant users of your product. And so when you are creating a strategic narrative, you need to do research measures that help you incorporate those voices. And going back to bullet point number 1, how do you make sure you are held accountable to that, right? As a DEI expert, I've been running a beta for about 3 years now, and this is our second round of beta in our product. And this is one of the things that we learned is creating spaces for stakeholder empowerment in our narrative. So it wasn't just about our clients. It wasn't just about our board of directors. It wasn't just about our strategic partners, right? It was finding a way to encompass all of those, but doing it with an equity lens that made sure that every population had the same amount of space to contribute to how we develop our narrative at Inclusology. This next one is interesting, and it is a mouthful, and let me tell you why. So when you evaluate your who, your what, your when, your how, your why, and your where of accessibility, there's one common thing based on inclusion that I want you to know about accessibility, and that is that it's not just about meeting ADA compliance. So when many companies think about building a strategic narrative and you think about accessibility, you don't often think about accessibility in the space of who has the socioeconomic resources to use your product, right? You don't think about accessibility when it comes to hearing, when it comes to vision, when it comes to disability. So I want you to think about disability. I want you to think about socioeconomic status. I want you to take every component of diversity that you can think of that has a person's identity, and I want you to think about the group that may receive the most privilege within that identity and the group that may receive the least amount of privilege based on their identity. Right? So when you're evaluating who's using your product, it's not just who's using your product, it's also who's building your product, right? When you think about the what is what is important, what about your product is going to benefit these different populations, et cetera, et cetera. So when you think about the who, what, when, how, why, and where, don't just think of that as one dimensional. Think about that as multidimensional for multiple identities. The next is when you design your narrative, make sure it's supporting equity-driven outcomes. So if, for example, I'm a leader in a company and I'm communicating a broader vision and I talk about what it is that we plan to do, I want you as a leader need to make sure that your narrative supports the outcomes that you are designing in your strategic plan in order to service the populations who are going to use your product and or service. And I think that those are 4 key components for building an enterprise solution, especially when we think about it from a DEI lens.
Thank you, Cheryl. Very, very well said, right? If you do not have a strategic narrative that a customer wants and what you're looking for, they both have to align because you're driving equity and you're driving representation, you're driving inclusion for people to do really high productive work. At the end of the day, technology drives that capability. So keep that in mind. If you're not building a strategic narrative with your customer, that should be your first action that you should be taking right away. And if you are looking for templates or you're looking for access to those resources, we can definitely provide. Tomorrow, we actually have is the Road to Unlocking Enterprise Contracts. That event is there. We'll go deep dive about how to and what we need to do. Please come and join there. The next one is setting a $1 million goal. Without a goal, you cannot really build a tech solution. So we all need a motivation. So if you do not have that motivation to get that started, I would have Sophia inspire all of us to set that $1 million goal and build tech solutions on Microsoft Cloud. Sophia, take it from here.
Thank you, Chai. I'm Sophia Stone, founder of Indie Group, as well as founder of Indie Tech, so 2 separate companies. And I'm here today to talk about setting $1 million goal, which is really enterprise sales and the background that I come from. I think when I first started Indie Tech, I had the idea for Indie Tech long before I actually started it. And the reason for that is, as a Latin woman, I knew that the chances of me raising were quite small. It's actually 0.37% of venture capital is raised by Latinas. And so I knew that going in, and so I had to somehow create a little bit of revenue to be able to fund the tech company, and that's often what I suggest to people so that you don't give up so much of your equity from the start. And that's what I did. I come from a consulting background. I built a 7-figure consulting firm, risk consulting firm in financial services. And from there, I used the funding to essentially automate that business and build that business out, knowing that it was the only way that I could actually do this tech company, because it's so hard to get your first enterprise sale. And so when I talk about this with my team, sometimes my team can get overwhelmed by the size of the project in front of you. Typically, an enterprise platform has to be much more fulsome in the MVP compared to, let's say, a B2C that you can launch and really iterate quickly on. And so I tell this story about when I lived in Japan. I lived in Japan for my early 20s, and the thing that you do in Japan is you climb Mount Fuji all through the night so that you can watch the sun rise in the morning. And I went not prepared, not really understanding what I was doing. I was in shorts. It was 45 degrees at base, and you climb throughout the night. In the middle of the night, you really want to stop because it's a huge mountain or volcano. And so really, you just have to focus at that point when you look down and you want to go down, and there's no way to go down, and you look up and it's so far. And so you just take the step in front of you and you just focus on what's the next piece that I can conquer in order to get to that peak. And so I call this the accordion thinking. You need to, as a CEO, I think it's a lot different from your team, but you need to always understand where the peak is and what are the steps that you need to get there so that you can communicate that to your team while also having a vision of getting there. And it's accordion thinking, which can be overwhelming, but if you still keep focusing on what that next step is, it does help. And so what that means is, in order to conquer that $1 million goal of getting into enterprise and selling into enterprise, which is typically an 18-month process to get an MSA done, at least in financial services, which is highly regulated and very challenging, you really need to understand the enterprise procurement process that you're working with. I talk a lot about supplier diversity. So if you are a diverse founder, it's really good to get in so that you can have an eye into what the procurement process is for whatever institution you're trying to target. And so once you have an understanding of what that process is, you can plan for it. And that's really what we did when we set out to build our process, knowing that banks have crazy amounts of security that you have to get through. We actually started with enterprise level architecture and then pared it down to what the MVP was, so that we knew once we got to that sale, we could pass due diligence much, much more easily. What typically happens in the fintech space is you have people who don't understand those requirements and they build a solution, but once they try and engage with the enterprise, they're not prepared for that procurement process. And so it's really, really important to understand what the process is to get into your client before you really start. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of capital trying to catch up, and that could be critical to your company. So really planning for that due diligence is key early on so that it's not an impediment to hitting that $1 million goal. And then the last thing that I would say, I call it the three-legged stool, is you really need to understand what I think are three main stakeholders: the person who's going to use the technology and who knows the problem intimately and hates the problem. You need to convince them. You need to know who your sponsor is going to be, who's going to sponsor the master service agreement. That's typically at the SVP, C-suite level, VP level within an enterprise. So you need to know who that person is, and then you need to know who your sourcing person is. And as long as you can manage those three relationships and bring them together, and sometimes it's more, right? Sometimes you're building an enterprise solution that's in one silo, you have, a user and the sponsor, but you have another silo that you need to break into. So having an understanding of who those users are and being able to bring them together so that as you go through that procurement process, you can really close that $1 million deal. I think that is really, really critical to being able to break into the enterprise space and then also continue selling into the enterprise space as you try to scale out your solution.
Thank you, Sophia. Great insight. So as you're thinking about, these laws, these women have actually mastered the the enterprise sales. So if you're a partner, want to partner with them, feel free to reach out to them. And we are sharing links to learn about their solution and request a demo, connect with them, and really explore what that partnership looks like, because they're already operating in the enterprise ecosystem. The last law, which is around developing the UI UX before building a solution. We all talk about capital. You don't need capital for building a UI UX. If you have designers, that is a very low cost one. Really look at is building what a customer needs. My personal philosophy is never develop a tech solution without an UI UX. No writing requirements till you have all your screenshots done and your experience map is created. I spend a lot of time hosting events, and planning and organizing events. So one of the things that we have seen as we were doing our own events, because the solution was implemented because we wanted to solve our own problem, and then we commercialized our product Speaker Engage. But what we really focused on was, addressing the manual steps. There were constant these manual steps that we had to do every single day, every single hour. So we wanted to kind of make sure we remove those particular manual steps and define what are those manual steps are visually defined, and then you figure out what can be automated. Second, automate every step of the process in the UI UX process, not just one. Usually people do 2 or 3 screenshots and they say, oh, we'll figure that out. It's not really. You have to really build every screenshot, every button, every click, so you know what the flow would look like, and then validate with your domain expert. And third is pilot. Pilot with your customer. Design the solution with the customer. Do not go build a solution and then try to go into an enterprise market and say, hey, this is our solution. It never works. Enterprise ecosystem, you may have a solution, but they will always have a customization, making sure that you can iterate with them. So have an iteration process anywhere from 30 days to 60 days, not more than that, but really try to do many experimentation till you get to the outcome. So as we went through it, we did a full automation around the speaker management, sponsor management, security. So we had to really look at every function as the event organizer. What are all the functions we had to do, and really drive all the UI UX and then build the solution. So that's kind of the 5 laws. Based on all the 5 laws, which law resonated with you? And second, what is the place you will go deep dive in your business to really see what you're going to be working on in next 30 days? Go ahead and put it in the text, in the chat box. And ladies, as you heard each other, what did stand out for you personally? What are you going to take away?
I think we were all SMEs, which is interesting. We all were in this space first, saw the problem, and designed a solution because we knew the problem so acutely.
Anyone else? Was there any takeaway, Bhavya, Jackie, Cheryl, as people are going to put some aha and learnings and takeaways in the chat box? It's chat room.
Sophia's really resonated with me, especially the piece about where she stated the statistics about raising as a Latinx woman. Is that how you identify, Sophia? Okay, just making sure. I really appreciated that she was able to take that and then use that as a lens to talk about her law. That was great.
I think what went well with me, or something that I feel like all of us are talking about extensively, is talking to the stakeholders in some or the other capacity. I think all the 4 laws, still 5 laws, in fact, talk about feedback, talking to the stakeholders, and actually getting in touch with them at several stages of your development.
Absolutely. And Jackie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm personally going to think about, the strategic narrative. And that's something that's really important to my business in terms of understanding the diversity of the legal profession and in some ways the lack of diversity. I see the tedious tasks that there is data that supports this too, that women and BIPOC tend to have be given those tasks disproportionately, and that should really become part of how we think about our platform.
Absolutely. Very, very well done. So here are some insights from the community too, is like they really appreciate the accordion thinking, really invest in strategic narrative. That is a crucial component. If you have not invested in building a strategic narrative, we would ask you, if you're going in enterprise, that is a skilling. That's how all executives think. And then law number 3 and 5 has resonated from the internal initiatives and awareness. So here are a few steps. 1, define your cloud solution narrative that allows you to really understand what are you really offering. Second one is educate yourself in SaaS building before actually building your tech solution. Most of the people jump in and then they are like learning, and there are a lot of mistakes you do. Just understand the licensing, understand how to really think about UI UX work, defining your team, what kind of team you need to build, because SaaS solutions are very expensive to build if you are not doing it right. If you put it on those cloud infrastructure, if you don't know how to manage the metering, by the time you realize it's like $10,000 of cloud consumption has happened. You need to really understand the basics. And then the last one is really leverage the templates that are available for you. Start with using the templates so you're not really starting from scratch. And also join the Women in Cloud community if you want to learn more about it, because this is the education we do for every entrepreneur. Whether you are a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. Please come and get educated, because each of us can create $1 million business or more, and we can create more talent force that can come into the tech force. That is more exciting for all of us. So there are 5 events that are available for all of you. One is, there's the first one is the roadmap to unlocking enterprise contracts. This one is more of a deep dive. Today we talked about the laws of how to really think about building a solution. Tomorrow is how to deep dive every little things what you need to consider to really have your solutions done. So please join us, and you get to really meet the experts in the industry who have done this one, and they're creating annual recurring revenue contracts. The second piece of the events that we have is around the marketplace. Right now, the digital co-selling with Microsoft will be the lead strategy, and you already heard at Microsoft Inspire that they reduced the marketplace fees from 20% to 3%. Absolutely phenomenal signal in the market. So more and more companies should be thinking about how to leverage the marketplace and building a tech solution and leveraging that transactionable engine. For all the women entrepreneurs who are here, please consider joining the open house. If you want to be part of the accelerator, this allows you to really build tech solutions like all women, what they talked about. Absolutely spectacular solutions, winning $1 billion markets. We have is a lunch and learn session with Accenture and Boeing coming up. If you want to really meet with those founder, like I would say decision makers and leadership team, join that community. And the WIC ANGA, which is our UN event focused. So if you would love to be part of that particular programming, please come and join our community. Hopefully all of you acquired some new skill, and all these amazing entrepreneurs have given you their wisdom to really build your tech solution. So if you have any questions, I'll just leave it for a couple of minutes before we can wrap up the call. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing your feedback, that it was helpful and insightful. Any other takeaways that you're going to take away and build a tech solution? Thank you, Angela. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, with that, please, let's be connected. We are part of the IAMCP community, and a loud shout out to Eddie and the entire leadership for giving us the opportunity to be here and sharing our wisdom of how to build tech solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem.